A forbidden love ignites under blinding stage lights as Jimin risks everything, career, loyalty, and safety, for a love that could destroy him. The fire begins. If loving you is a risk, then let me burn bright. The words left Jimin's mouth before fear could swallow them back. The stage lights exploded in white, hotter than they had ever felt, blinding him as tens of thousands screamed his name. The stadium trembled under the weight of devotion, thunder rolling from human throats. Sweat slid down his spine beneath silk and sequins. Smoke curled from hidden vents at the edge of the stage, smelling faintly of metal and fireworks. And Jungkook was staring at him. Not as a bandmate, not as a brother, but as if the world had just cracked open and something fragile had finally stepped into daylight. Jimin's pulse roared in his ears louder than the music. He had planned to stay silent. He had rehearsed caution in hotel mirrors and behind locked dressing room doors. He had promised himself he would be professional, untouchable. But the way Jungkook's fingers brushed his wrist during the choreography, lingering a fraction too long, had unraveled him. The crowd screamed again, unaware that history had shifted in a single sentence. Jungkook moved closer, eyes dark and wide, his breath unsteady despite the practiced smile still painted on his face. "Are you insane?" he whispered without moving his lips. Jimin's lips curved in something too raw to be called a smile, probably. The bass dropped. The choreography demanded distance, but Jimin closed it instead. The cameras were everywhere. The world was watching. And for the first time, he didn't care. The heat of the pyrotechnics flared, flames shooting up along the stage's edge. It felt symbolic, too on the nose, almost cruel. If loving you is a risk, let me burn bright. The performance ended in a storm of glitter and breathlessness. As soon as they disappeared backstage, the cheers muffled into a distant ocean. The silence between them became dangerous. Jungkook grabbed his wrist the moment they were alone in the corridor, dragging him into a narrow storage room that smelled of dust and fabric dye. He locked the door. "What are you doing?" Jungkook demanded, voice low but shaking. "Do you want everything to fall apart?" Jimin leaned back against stacked speaker cases, chest rising and falling. "It's already falling apart." "That's not true." "It is for me." The words were softer now, but heavier. Jungkook's anger faltered. Jimin rarely admitted weakness. He carried his doubts like secret bruises, hidden beneath charm, beneath laughter, beneath flawless performances. "You think I don't feel it?" Jungkook whispered. Jimin looked up. That was the problem. He did feel it, and feeling was dangerous. "I can live with longing," Jungkook continued, voice breaking slightly. "I can live with stolen glances and late-night conversations, but I can't live with destroying everything we built." Jimin swallowed. The metallic scent of stage smoke still clung to his lungs. "I'm tired of being careful." He was tired of calculating every touch, tired of analyzing interviews for accidental slips, tired of pretending that the warmth in his chest was just friendship. "I've spent my whole life trying to be perfect," Jimin said. "Perfect son, perfect trainee, perfect idol. When do I get to be honest?" Jungkook's grip softened. "You're not afraid of losing the fans?" Jungkook asked. Jimin laughed quietly. "I'm afraid of losing myself." That was the truth he had never spoken aloud. The knock on the door came too soon. A manager's voice called their names. Reality snapped back into place. Jungkook stepped away first. "We'll talk later," he said. But Jimin knew later meant silence. It always had. When Jungkook left the room, Jimin stayed behind, hands trembling. He pressed his palms against his eyes, breathing through the ache blooming in his chest. "Burn bright." The phrase felt less romantic now. It felt like a warning. Cracks in the spotlight. Rumors spread faster than fire. A slowed-down clip of their performance circulated online, a frame where Jimin's gaze lingered too long, a moment where Jungkook's fingers tightened around his waist. Speculation turned into headlines. Inside the company building, the air was colder than usual. The CEO's office smelled of leather and expensive cologne. Jimin stood alone in front of the massive desk, hands clasped behind his back like a scolded student. "You understand the impact of your words last night," the CEO said calmly. Jimin met his gaze. "Yes. And yet I don't regret them." The silence that followed was sharp. "You are not just a man," the CEO continued. "You are a symbol. Symbols do not belong to themselves." The sentence landed like a slap. Jimin bowed slightly, but his spine remained straight. "I'm still human. Humans are replaceable, brands are not." There it was, the threat beneath politeness. When Jimin left the office, his hands were ice cold. In the hallway, Jungkook waited. "What did they say?" "That I'm not a person," Jimin replied lightly. Jungkook's jaw tightened. The weight between them had shifted. No longer just secret longing, now consequence hovered over every word. "Maybe we should lie low," Jungkook said after a moment. Jimin studied his face, memorizing the curve of his mouth, the scar near his eyebrow, the way anxiety flickered in his eyes when he tried to be strong. "Are you ashamed?" Jimin asked quietly. Jungkook recoiled. "No." "Then what are you afraid of?" Jungkook didn't answer immediately. When he did, it was barely audible. "Losing you." Jimin stepped closer. "You won't. You can't promise that." No, he couldn't. Because loving someone in a world that demanded perfection was like holding a flame in a hurricane. The weight of silence. The dorm felt different that night, too quiet, too observant. Jimin sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the city lights through the window. Seoul shimmered beneath him, indifferent to private wars. His phone buzzed with messages, friends checking in, cryptic comments from staff, endless notifications from fans dissecting his every movement. He turned it off. A soft knock came at his door. Jungkook entered without waiting. Neither spoke at first. The distance between them felt fragile, like glass. "I had a nightmare," Jungkook admitted suddenly. "You were gone." Jimin's heart twisted. He reached out instinctively, fingers brushing Jungkook's knuckles. Electricity shot up his arm. "We are still here," Jimin whispered. "For now." The vulnerability in Jungkook's voice unraveled something inside him. Jimin stood and pulled him into an embrace that was no longer cautious. Jungkook's face pressed into his shoulder. His breath was warm against Jimin's neck. "I don't know how to be brave like you," Jungkook confessed. Jimin smiled faintly. "I'm not brave. I'm terrified." "Then why do it?" "Because some fires are worth the scars." Questions were sharp, disguised as concern. Cameras flashed like lightning. "Are the rumors true? Is there more than friendship? Have you betrayed your fans' trust?" Jimin felt Jungkook's presence beside him, steady but tense. He could deny it. He could laugh it off. He could protect the empire built around them. Instead, he reached for Jungkook's hand under the table. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Jungkook froze. Jimin inhaled. "I have never betrayed anyone," he said clearly. "Loving someone is not betrayal." The words echoed. For a heartbeat, time stopped. Then the world erupted. A fallout. Contracts were reviewed, endorsements paused, statements drafted and redrafted. The dorm felt like a temporary shelter before a storm. Jungkook paced the living room. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." "You're risking everything." Jimin's voice softened. "I'm choosing everything." Jungkook stopped moving. For the first time, fear was no longer louder than love. He stepped forward, cupped Jimin's face, and kissed him. Slow, deliberate, no cameras, no audience. Just truth. Burn bright. The backlash came, but so did unexpected support. Letters arrived, messages of gratitude, stories from people who had hidden parts of themselves for too long. Jimin read them late at night, tears slipping quietly down his cheeks. Maybe burning bright didn't mean destruction. Maybe it meant lighting a path. The aftermath of fire. Months later, the stage felt different. Not safer, but real. Jimin stood beneath the lights again, heart steady. Jungkook joined him, their shoulders brushing naturally now. The crowd still roared, the music still thundered. But the fear that once lived in Jimin's chest had transformed into something warmer. Freedom. He glanced at Jungkook. If loving you is a risk, he thought, then I choose it every time. The flames rose again at the edge of the stage, but this time they didn't feel like a warning. They felt like a promise. And Jimin burned, not in destruction, but in brilliance. The fire did not fade after that night, it spread. 3 days after the public confession, Jimin stood alone on the rooftop of the company building, the wind cutting sharp against his skin as if Seoul itself wanted to test his resolve. Below him, the city pulsed in restless light. Above him, the sky was bruised with clouds, heavy and waiting. The door behind him slammed open. You think this is bravery? Jungkook's voice was raw, almost unrecognizable. You think standing in front of the world like that makes you a hero? Jimin didn't turn around. I never wanted to be a hero. Then what do you want? Jungkook demanded. Silence stretched between them, tense as a wire ready to snap. I want to stop pretending that I don't love you, Jimin said quietly. The words hung in the cold air, visible like breath. Jungkook's footsteps approached, uneven. Do you know what they said to me this morning? He asked, voice trembling. They said I need to clarify my position. Clarify, like you're a mistake I accidentally stood too close to. Jimin finally turned. The pain in Jungkook's eyes was worse than any headline. And what did you say? Jimin asked. I said I need time. The answer hit harder than anger would have. Time, Jimin repeated softly. You forced the world to look at us, Jungkook said, stepping closer, but you didn't ask if I was ready. The accusation lodged deep. I thought you were, Jimin replied. You thought, Jungkook echoed bitterly, you decided for both of us. Jimin's jaw tightened. No, I decided for myself. The wind howled between them. I've spent years hiding, Jimin continued, voice breaking through composure, counting the seconds before I could let my guard down, watching every touch, every glance. I was disappearing, Jungkook. I couldn't breathe anymore. Jungkook's anger flickered into something more complicated. And what about me? You think I don't suffocate too, but I was willing to endure it, for us. For us, Jimin's eyes glistened, or for safety. Jungkook froze. That was the truth neither of them wanted to face. Footsteps echoed again from the stairwell. This time it wasn't a lover, it was management. Their manager's face was pale when he stepped onto the rooftop. We need you downstairs, now. The conference room felt colder than ever before. Lawyers, executives, silence so thick it tasted metallic. You have two options, one of the executives said evenly. Issue a clarification stating that your words were misinterpreted, or prepare for indefinite suspension. Jimin didn't blink. Suspension. Jungkook turned sharply. Jimin. I'm not retracting my truth. The executive's expression hardened. Truth does not protect brands. Maybe brands shouldn't be built on lies, Jimin shot back. The room exploded into overlapping voices. Jungkook grabbed Jimin's arm under the table. Stop, he whispered urgently, please. Jimin felt the tremor in his grip. Look at me, Jungkook demanded softly. Their eyes met. In that gaze lived every rehearsal room laugh, every exhausted midnight confession, every unspoken promise. Fear was there, but so was something stronger. I'm scared, Jungkook admitted, voice barely audible. Not of loving you, of losing everything else. Jimin's anger softened. If loving me means you lose yourself, then don't choose me. The room fell quiet at that sentence. Jungkook stared at him, stunned. You think I'm choosing against you? I think you're torn, Jimin said, and I don't want to be your war. The vulnerability in his voice silenced even the executives. Jungkook stood abruptly, his chair scraped loudly against the floor. I'm not torn, he said, breath shaking. I'm furious. About what? That you're willing to sacrifice yourself like it doesn't matter. Jimin blinked. I've sacrificed everything for this career. And now you're sacrificing it for me. The truth struck like lightning. Jimin laughed weakly. You say that like it's a tragedy. It is if you end up alone, Jungkook shot back. Silence again. The executive cleared his throat. We need a decision. Jungkook looked at Jimin. Not as a teammate. Not as a secret. But as the person who had set his world on fire. You said you didn't want to be my war, Jungkook murmured. Then stop fighting alone. Before anyone could react, Jungkook turned toward the executives. There will be no clarification, he said firmly. If he's suspended, so am I. Shock rippled across the table. You're under separate contracts, a lawyer protested. Then suspend us separately. Jimin's breath caught. Jungkook. You don't get to burn by yourself, Jungkook said, eyes blazing. If this is a risk, we take it together. The room dissolved into chaos once more, but Jimin barely heard it. His heartbeat thundered louder than any argument. Later that night, the dorm was heavy with uncertainty. No official statement had been released yet. Phones buzzed relentlessly. The future felt fragile. Jimin stood by the window again, but this time he wasn't alone. Jungkook approached slowly, hesitating only for a second before wrapping his arms around Jimin's waist from behind. The embrace wasn't cautious. It wasn't secret. It was desperate. You're infuriating, Jungkook muttered against his shoulder. Jimin smiled faintly. You love me anyway. Jungkook turned him around, hands sliding up to cup his face. His eyes were red but steady. I don't love you because it's dramatic, Jungkook said. I love you because when everything feels like it's collapsing, you're the only thing that feels real. Jimin's breath trembled. And if the world turns against us, he asked. Then we face it. And if we lose everything? Jungkook leaned his forehead against Jimin's. Then we build something new. The kiss that followed wasn't hurried. It wasn't performative. It was a collision of fear and devotion, of anger and relief. Fingers tightened in fabric, hearts pounding in sync. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, two people chose each other without guarantees. Hours later, as dawn began to bleed pale light across the sky, Jimin lay awake, listening to Jungkook's steady breathing beside him. For the first time, the fire didn't feel like destruction. It felt like transformation. And though uncertainty still lingered like smoke in the air, Jimin understood something with piercing clarity. Burning bright was never about spectacle. It was about refusing to disappear.
The silence before the announcement felt more violent than any scandal. Jimin woke to the sound of his phone vibrating endlessly against the wooden nightstand, a mechanical heartbeat that refused to stop. Pale morning light filtered through thin curtains, cutting across Jungkook's sleeping face. For a fleeting second, everything looked peaceful, ordinary. Then he checked the news. Temporary hiatus. The words glared at him from every headline. Not a suspension. Not support. A carefully crafted in-between. He sat up slowly, breath shallow. Jungkook stirred beside him. What is it? Jungkook murmured, voice rough with sleep. They released it. Jungkook blinked, pushing himself up on one elbow, and they're calling it a mutual decision for reflection. Jungkook let out a humorless laugh. Reflection. Jimin tossed the phone onto the bed between them. They're freezing us without saying it. Jungkook read silently, jaw tightening. They're trying to calm investors. They're trying to erase the fire. For a moment neither spoke. The room felt smaller, heavier. Then Jungkook did something unexpected. He smiled. Not brightly, not happily, but with defiance. They think time will make people forget, he said quietly, but people don't forget what feels real. Jimin studied him. Are you still scared? Yes. The honesty didn't waver. But I'm more scared of going back to pretending. The words warmed something in Jimin's chest. A knock interrupted them. Too firm, too official. Jungkook stood first, Jimin followed. When the door opened, it wasn't management this time. It was another member. His expression was unreadable. You two need to see what's happening outside, he said. Outside the dorm building, fans had gathered, not in protest but in vigil, handmade banners, flowers, signs that read, "Love is not a scandal." Others were harsher, conflicted, divided. The noise was not unified. It was alive. Jimin felt his throat tighten. They came, he whispered. Jungkook's hand brushed his back lightly. For you. For us. But the unity was fragile. Later that afternoon, a live broadcast request came through unofficial channels. A major media outlet wanted an exclusive interview. No filters, no pre-approved questions. The company advised against it. Absolutely not, their manager said sternly. You're already on thin ice. Jimin sat at the dining table, fingers laced together. If we don't speak, someone else will speak for us. Jungkook looked between them. What kind of interview? Unedited, the manager replied. They'll ask everything. Jimin's pulse quickened. Good, he said. The studio lights were harsher than any concert stage, colder, less forgiving. Across from them sat a journalist known for dismantling public figures with polite smiles. Let's not waste time, she began smoothly. Are you in a romantic relationship? The air shifted instantly. Jungkook's knee brushed Jimin's under the table, a silent anchor. Yes, Jimin said. The journalist's eyebrows lifted slightly, with each other. Jungkook exhaled slowly. Yes. No ambiguity. No retreat. Do you understand the cultural impact of this admission? She pressed. We do, Jungkook answered. And you're willing to jeopardize your careers. Jimin leaned forward slightly. If our careers require us to deny who we are, then they were already jeopardized. The journalist paused. Some fans feel betrayed. Jimin nodded. I understand that. When you invest your heart into someone's image, change feels like loss. And what would you say to them? He didn't hesitate. I would say that loving someone does not take love away from others. The room grew still. Then the journalist asked the question that sliced deepest. Were you ever dishonest with your audience? Jungkook inhaled sharply. Jimin answered softly, we were afraid. It wasn't the answer she expected. We were afraid of disappointing people, he continued. Afraid of losing everything we worked for. That fear shaped silence, but silence isn't the same as deceit. The tension eased slightly, but not completely. And what happens if the industry shuts its doors on you? She asked. Jungkook glanced at Jimin. Then we find a door we build ourselves, he said. The interview aired that night. The reaction was explosive. Support surged in waves across social platforms. Artists from different countries spoke out. Some criticized, some withdrew partnerships, some publicly praised their courage. Inside the dorm, adrenaline hadn't worn off. Jimin paced the living room. Did we say too much? Jungkook watched him. No. What if we just accelerated the fall? Jungkook stood, crossing the room in 2 strides. He grabbed Jimin's shoulders, grounding him. Look at me. Jimin's breathing was uneven. We didn't fall, Jungkook said firmly. We stepped forward. Emotion cracked through Jimin's composure. I don't want you to regret this. Jungkook's eyes flashed. Stop deciding what I might regret. The words hit hard, but not cruelly. I chose this, Jungkook continued. I chose you, don't diminish that by acting like I was dragged. Jimin's defenses melted. I don't know how to protect you from what's coming. Jungkook's expression softened. You don't protect me, he said quietly. You stand beside me. Silence settled between them, heavy but no longer hostile. Then Jungkook's voice lowered, intense. You think you're the only one who's been burning? He asked. Jimin blinked. I've been on fire for years, Jungkook whispered. Every time I had to pull my hand away, every time I wanted to look at you longer but couldn't, every time I heard rumors and stayed silent. The confession was raw. You're not alone in this, Jungkook said. Jimin stepped closer, their foreheads almost touching. Then let's stop surviving, Jimin murmured. Let's start living. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. A storm had been building all evening. Rain began to pour, fierce and unapologetic. Jungkook reached for Jimin's hand and pulled him toward the balcony despite the weather. The rain soaked them instantly, clothes clinging, hair plastered to their foreheads. You're insane, Jimin laughed breathlessly. Probably, Jungkook echoed, eyes shining. Lightning flashed in the distance. You wanted to burn bright, Jungkook shouted over the rain. This is what it feels like. Jimin's heart pounded, not from fear but exhilaration. The storm didn't feel like punishment. It felt like rebirth. They stood there together, drenched and shaking as the city blurred around them. No contracts. No interviews. No headlines. Just two people refusing to step back into shadows. When they finally returned inside, dripping water across the floor, Jimin realized something profound. The fire hadn't consumed them. It had revealed them. And for the first time, the future, uncertain, controversial, fragile, didn't look like an ending. It looked like a beginning. The silence before the announcement felt more violent than any scandal. Jimin woke to the sound of his phone vibrating endlessly against the wooden nightstand, a mechanical heartbeat that refused to stop. Pale morning light filtered through thin curtains, cutting across Jungkook's sleeping face. For a fleeting second, everything looked peaceful, ordinary. Then he checked the news. Temporary hiatus. The words glared at him from every headline. Not a suspension. Not support. A carefully crafted in-between. He sat up slowly, breath shallow. Jungkook stirred beside him. What is it? Jungkook murmured, voice rough with sleep. They released it. Jungkook blinked, pushing himself up on one elbow, and they're calling it a mutual decision for reflection. Jungkook let out a humorless laugh. Reflection. Jimin tossed the phone onto the bed between them. They're freezing us without saying it. Jungkook read silently, jaw tightening. They're trying to calm investors. They're trying to erase the fire. For a moment neither spoke. The room felt smaller, heavier. Then Jungkook did something unexpected. He smiled. Not brightly, not happily, but with defiance. They think time will make people forget, he said quietly, but people don't forget what feels real. Jimin studied him. Are you still scared? Yes. The honesty didn't waver. But I'm more scared of going back to pretending. The words warmed something in Jimin's chest. A knock interrupted them. Too firm, too official. Jungkook stood first, Jimin followed. When the door opened, it wasn't management this time. It was another member. His expression was unreadable. You two need to see what's happening outside, he said. Outside the dorm building, fans had gathered, not in protest but in vigil, handmade banners, flowers, signs that read, "Love is not a scandal." Others were harsher, conflicted, divided. The noise was not unified. It was alive. Jimin felt his throat tighten. They came, he whispered. Jungkook's hand brushed his back lightly. For you. For us. But the unity was fragile. Later that afternoon, a live broadcast request came through unofficial channels. A major media outlet wanted an exclusive interview. No filters, no pre-approved questions. The company advised against it. Absolutely not, their manager said sternly. You're already on thin ice. Jimin sat at the dining table, fingers laced together. If we don't speak, someone else will speak for us. Jungkook looked between them. What kind of interview? Unedited, the manager replied. They'll ask everything. Jimin's pulse quickened. Good, he said. The studio lights were harsher than any concert stage, colder, less forgiving. Across from them sat a journalist known for dismantling public figures with polite smiles. Let's not waste time, she began smoothly. Are you in a romantic relationship? The air shifted instantly. Jungkook's knee brushed Jimin's under the table, a silent anchor. Yes, Jimin said. The journalist's eyebrows lifted slightly, with each other. Jungkook exhaled slowly. Yes. No ambiguity. No retreat. Do you understand the cultural impact of this admission? She pressed. We do, Jungkook answered. And you're willing to jeopardize your careers. Jimin leaned forward slightly. If our careers require us to deny who we are, then they were already jeopardized. The journalist paused. Some fans feel betrayed. Jimin nodded. I understand that. When you invest your heart into someone's image, change feels like loss. And what would you say to them? He didn't hesitate. I would say that loving someone does not take love away from others. The room grew still. Then the journalist asked the question that sliced deepest. Were you ever dishonest with your audience? Jungkook inhaled sharply. Jimin answered softly, we were afraid. It wasn't the answer she expected. We were afraid of disappointing people, he continued. Afraid of losing everything we worked for. That fear shaped silence,